What's up, everyone, and welcome to this video. Today we're going to be taking a look at America's most haunted prisons. This we're getting from an article from American Hauntings. It looks like they have a wide variety of articles on here, so I'll probably be using this as a resource for the near future. Thanks for checking out this channel. You can find me on BitChute, Odyssey, as well as YouTube. I have a little bit of a presence on Rumble, but I'm still kind of figuring that one out. So let's go ahead and take a look at these various hauntings and see what we got. America's most haunted prisons and jails, compiled by Troy Taylor from the Dead Men Do Tell Tales series. That's a pretty cool looking prison there. I wonder what this is over here. Some lines sticking up. If you ever seen Ghost Adventures, they've done some pretty cool episodes where they went to various prisons, and they had some really good activity, I think, in Alcatraz, which is on this list. When compiling a list of America's most haunted places, prisons and jails are usually high on the list. The amount of trauma, pain, and terror experienced by the men who are incarcerated often leaves a lasting impression behind, and horrible events that occur behind the prison's high walls tend to cause the spirits of the men in prison to remain in death, just as they were in life. There is no escape, even after death. Yeah, I'm not sure about the whole ghost thing. I mean, as a Baha'i, we don't believe in demons and stuff, but there have been some really interesting cases where people can actually feel like almost some sort of resonating effect in like an area that it's experienced a lot of trauma. Like I've heard about people going to Gettysburg and really feeling like all sorts of emotional distress. And so I find it to be a fascinating topic, and that's one reason why I wanted to do a video on this, is because I find the idea of lingering emotions, I guess, within something. Like, have you ever gone to a building, or I've been to like a couple haunted museums or whatever, like buildings that are supposedly haunted, and they have like different little tourist traps, I guess you could call them. And when you go to certain sections, you can almost feel something. Like I went to one museum, and then I also went to like some old forts. Like if you go to the Alamo, you can almost feel like I don't know. It almost seems like something resonates within the presence of that building, like the emotions that were there. I don't know. I mean, there's nothing really scientific about it, I don't think, but it is something that I find rather interesting to take a look at. Okay, so let's take a look at the first one here. We have Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I was in Philadelphia a couple years ago. I should have checked this out when I was up there. Founded by the Quakers in 1829, who envisioned the stone castle as a place where criminals could become penitent for their crimes, hence the name penitentiary, the prison was a place of total isolation. Inmates were confined in windowless rooms and allowed no contact with any living person. Yeah, that's not going to really lead to much reform. That's just going to make people lose their minds, being totally isolated like that. Many of them were driven insane by the solitude. There you go. Punishments for breaking the rules were extreme, and suicides became common. Solitary confinement was ended in the 1870s, and a century later the prison was closed down. Since that time, ghost stories and paranormal encounters have become commonplace. Apparitions have been seen, mysterious footsteps heard, and strange sounds reported. I mean, this is a tangent, which I'm well known for at this point, but one of the first houses that my dad owned, he was sleeping, and at night he would hear like the refrigerator shake a lot, and glasses and bottles would fall off the refrigerator. And you would think it would just be like the refrigerator just malfunctioning or something and stuff falling off. But then also his bed would begin to shake, like he'd just be in a dead sleep, and the whole bed would start to move about violently. And so I guess he said the next day he went and just took the bed to like some kind of secondhand furniture store, and they asked him how much he wanted for it, and he just told them they could have it for free. He didn't want any money for it, he just got rid of it. And my dad wasn't a superstitious man by any means, and he wasn't really into the occult or paranormal or much of anything like that. And his girlfriend at the time, she was doing some research at the library. I guess back in the day when you went to the library and they had those machines where you could look through the old newspaper articles. I forget what they're called. But she was looking through the various newspapers from I think this was in the early 70s. So I think she was doing research from like the early 60s or early 50s, I forget. But she found out that someone was actually murdered in that house, and the guy that, I guess he murdered his wife, and he murdered her with an axe. And then the the place that he murdered her was the bedroom where my dad was staying, and I guess there were some occurrences in the kitchen as well. So that's pretty wild. So, yeah, who knows? Alcatraz. This is the second on the list here. San Francisco, California. The Rock. The name given to Alcatraz Penitentiary was the ultimate American prison. It was a place where scores of the country's worst criminal offenders, bloodletters, badmen, and escaped artists called the end of the line. Although it started as a military prison for 29 years, the prison kept the country's most notorious lawbreakers, including Al Capone, Doc Barker, George Machine Gun Kelly, and others, confined behind the stone walls. I think Al Capone was at another prison. He was sent to a lot of the most famous and, I guess, secure prisons, which kind of makes sense since he was a well-known criminal. The initial prison was built in 1859, but fell into disuse by the 1920s. It was then reopened in 1933 to be an escape-proof federal prison. It was a brutal place of punishment and confinement with few privileges. Suicide, murder, and even insanity became common. In 1946, several inmates attempted a violent and bloody escape from the Rock but failed. There were a handful of other attempts, but only one successful escape in 1962 when 3 bank robbers, using handmade river rafts and dummies with real human hair, vanished into the dark waters of the bay. Alcatraz was closed down 1 year later in 1963. Regarded as one of America's most haunted places, ghosts have been widely reported ever since, even by staff members of the National Park Service, which now operates the property. Ghosts have been sighted along with strange sounds, screams, yells, weeping, and eerie music. Yeah, that's pretty wild. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these pictures from these various prisons that we're looking at so far. So, let's take a look at the Eastern State Penitentiary. Look at all this stuff. Yeah, like this room just screams like, I don't know if it's been photoshopped or what, but it just screams death and trauma, it looks like. Yeah, I guess they have some modern lights in there for tours and stuff. It's surreal looking at these old prisons. I think this is like a replica of Al Capone's room. Yep, yeah, Al Capone's cell, Eastern State Penitentiary. I'm not sure if this is the actual items that he had in his office, or in his cell, which is kind of like an office. Yeah, he's not doing too bad for a prisoner there, huh? Looks like a lot of these pictures are the same. Oh, wow. Damn. Would not want to be in that for any length of time, for sure. Oops, my bad. Let's see if we can get some more pictures here. That's pretty cool. Is that really on the outside of the prison? These gargoyles? That was a pretty cool show back in the day too. Back when cartoons were good. They were just fun. I really enjoy like old school anime because there's no computers in it. So it's like, back in my day, our anime had no computers and we liked it. So I'm starting to feel like getting to the point where I'm recollecting back on my days past. Oh, check out this one here. Top 10 prisons that you can visit. Yeah, I believe it. Alright, let's go ahead and move on to Alcatraz. Get an aerial shot here. Yeah, I think these are the guys that escaped. Though, I mean, supposedly they escaped, but then they're not sure if they actually made it to shore and they started a new life, or if they just died out in the water. Which, I mean, I guess if they had rafts, they could have feasibly gotten far along. And it was like, what, 1962? And there wasn't crazy technology like there is today. So they might have been able to start over somewhere. An encounter with Al Capone at Alcatraz. Yeah, Al Capone seems to have gone to like every major prison. Letter claiming inmates survive. Do we have any? Let's see if we can get some inside pictures. Oh gosh, I'll figure out how to type at some point. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, this one actually looks in relatively decent shape compared to the other ones. What's this? In the post office? The Commons. Yeah, this looks pretty run down here. Pretty cool. The Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio. The Ohio State Reformatory, made famous in the film The Shawshank Redemption, was opened in 1896 as a prison for criminals too old for juvenile facilities and not hardened enough for the Ohio State Penitentiary in Columbus. It saw untold thousands of prisoners during its years of operations, and while once applauded as a place that could humanely reform first-time offenders, the conditions deteriorated to the point it became known for abuse, torture, and murder. Already considered overcrowded and inhumane by the 1930s, the massive prison was kept open until 1986, even after a federal lawsuit was filed by the inmates that decided that it was unfit for human occupation. Yeah, your prison's doing pretty bad when the inmates sue, saying that it's unfit for human occupation. Since the closing of the reformatory, stories have circulated that it was haunted by the tormented spirits of former inmates, guards, and prison officials who have simply never left. Apparitions have been reported, footsteps have been heard, and unsettling encounters have taken place in the cells where the inmates once lived, suffered, and sometimes died. One of the resident ghosts is reported to be Helen Glatke, the wife of Warden Arthur L. Glatke. She died in 1950 in an apartment in the administration wing of the prison, when a loaded handgun fell from a closet shelf and went off. Her spirit has remained in the apartment ever since, often manifesting as a smell of perfume. Damn, talk about some really unfortunate luck though. Like a gun fell from a closet shelf. So like she's in like the shelf, or she's in like the closet or something, like working around and like looking for something, and knocks the gun over and the gun goes off and kills her. Damn, that really sucks. We have another Ohio prison here. 2 Ohio prisons. Ohio Penitentiary, formerly in Columbus, Ohio. The Ohio Penitentiary opened in 1834, and while first condemned by reformers in the early 1900s, it was not closed down until 1979. The prison has since been demolished, but haunting memories of it remain. During its year of operation, the prison saw scores of deaths from fire, cholera outbreaks, murder, and executions in the state's electric chair, but nothing matched the horror of the fire that engulfed the prison in April of 1930. Wow. The blaze swept through the west block of the penitentiary and killed 322 inmates in a single night. Think about that. 322 inmates pretty much burned alive unless they died from smoke inhalation. Jeez. While the prison was still open, inmates complained of ghostly sightings and eerie happenings, but when the buildings were finally torn down, tales quickly spread of apparitions among the ruins. Eventually, the prison was replaced by a sports arena, which is also rumored to be haunted. Man, I can't even imagine the amount of just trauma and pain and everything that was inflicted all at once. 322 people dealing with that. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these. Yeah, it actually looks pretty nice. Like it doesn't even really look like a prison. It's like some kind of mansion. It's all a facade. Appearances are deceiving. Wow, look at this. wild to look at old buildings that were once, regal and full of vibrancy, and now they're deteriorating. I mean, it's kind of crazy how much these buildings have deteriorated within 100 years, sometimes 150 years, maybe 200 years. And then you look at all the ancient Roman ruins and the Greek ruins. Those are comparably in relatively pretty good shape if you think about it. And of course my phone goes off while I'm recording. It always happens that way. Oh, this is a pretty cool pic. Attacked by a ghost. Now that staircase itself looks expensive, just with all that wood and the carving. Cool. Alright, let's take a look at the Ohio Penitentiary. I forget if there's other Ohio prisons on the list, if it's just these two. Yeah, it has a lot of the same pictures from the other one. From the different penitentiary. Or prison, I should say. Wow. That looks like about where the fire occurred. Maxwell Street Police Station, number 5, in Chicago, Illinois. The police station in Chicago's Maxwell Street neighborhood, known as Bloody Maxwell because of the escalating crime rate in the area, was constructed in 1889. At that time, the surrounding part of the city was home to thousands of Italian immigrants, including the Gena brothers, who partnered with Al Capone's organization during Prohibition to make bootleg liquor within blocks of the police station. What is that? Kind of like a hide in plain sight kind of deal? It became a notorious police station known for corruption, bribery, brutality, and torture. Many lawbreakers never left the basement dungeon alive. Wow. The station was closed down in 1997 and became to be used by the security officers for the nearby University of Illinois Chicago campus. It's currently being used for filming for the television show Chicago PD. Oh, that's cool. Although the cops and criminals of the station's past are long gone, stories say that they will linger here, especially those who were brutalized and killed in the dungeon. Screams have been reported coming from the basement, along with moaning, crying, and the sounds of rattling bars and handcuff chains. Lake County Jail in Crown Point, Indiana. The Lake County Jail, located in the county seat of Crown Point, was built in 1908 and enlarged 20 years later. At that time, county sheriffs were required to live at the jail, and so the combined residence and jail included all the facilities needed for its purpose as a law enforcement institution. Located within the walls were the family's living area, warden's residence, department of offices, 150 cells, maximum security accommodations, institutional kitchen, food storage, heating and cooling systems, a barbershop, and a garage. It was considered to be one of the finest in Indiana and thought to be escape-proof. However, on March 3, 1934, gangster John Dillinger proved it to be otherwise when he made a daring escape that gave the jail its continuing infamy. The jail remained in operation until the 1970s when it became a historic site. As restoration has continued over the last 2 decades, stories have emerged about a haunting at the jail. Apparitions have been seen in the cells and corridors, strange photographs have been taken, doors open and close by themselves, lights turn on and off, and disembodied footsteps and voices have been reported by volunteers and visitors alike. Alright, so we can get some pictures here. In Chicago. Yeah, it's pretty cool that it's used for a TV show, which is makes complete sense that they would do that. I guess you can get some footage if you just watch the show. That's pretty cool. Alright, let's check out the Lake County Jail. Yeah, it doesn't look like we're getting a whole lot of cool pictures for this one. Yeah. Oh well, let's get back to the article here. Alright, I'm probably going to butcher this one. Potawatomi County Jail, Council Bluffs, Iowa. Built in 1885, the old Potawatomi County Jail is one of the most unusual houses of incarceration in America. The jail has a 3-tier cell block with 10 cells on each tier. It was originally designed to rotate continuously throughout the day by means of a water wheel in the basement, earning it the nickname of the Squirrel Cage Jail. In this way, all of the prisoners could be watched from a central location. It kind of reminds me of that movie with Sylvester Stallone and that other guy. I think it was Sylvester Stallone. And the other guy is like where they have to break out of the prison, and like it's like everything is circular. I think and they can see through all of the cells. In this way, all the prisoners could be watched from a central location. Said that, but unfortunately the 45-ton cell block was simply too heavy to work right, and it became stuck frequently. Eventually, the jailers gave up on the plan, and a night guard had to be hired. The cylinder continued to be used until 1960, when a prisoner died in his cell and the cell block jammed, trapping the body in the cell for several days. Oh man, that sucks. I mean, it's already bad enough you're in jail and you're dealing with, life in jail, and then you have like somebody dying like right next to you, and then their corpse is just sitting there like rotting. That's probably not good. After that, cell doors were cut into every cell. The jail was closed down in 1969, and during its history, 4 deaths occurred within its walls. One man died of a heart attack, another in a fall when he tried to write his name on the ceiling, another hanged himself in his cell, and the last after an accident when an officer accidentally shot himself in the confusion of protecting the jail from an angry mob during the farmers' holiday strike of 1932. It's no surprise that these unlucky individuals, along with others, are believed to still linger at the old jail. West Virginia Penitentiary, Moundsville, West Virginia. The prison was built on the edge of Moundsville in 1866. The prison remained open for 129 years, finally closing down in 1995. During that time, the structure housed thousands of prisoners. Many lost their lives here through both state-sanctioned executions and during prison violence. Since its closure, the prison had become known as one of the most haunted sites in the country. Staff members and visitors alike have reported ghosts in North Hall, where the most dangerous inmates were housed, in the execution chamber, where Old Sparky sent many to an early grave, and the whole a brutal, solitary confinement area that often drove inmates to insanity and suicide. With death, violence, murder, and horrible conditions combining to make a terrifying haunting, ghost hunters have flocked to the former penitentiary over the years. Visitors claim to have experienced the sound of phantom footsteps, voices and noises that have no explanation, inexplicable cold chills, overwhelming feelings of panic, and more. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that episode of Ghost Adventures. I think there's a more recent one. Might have been a little bit ago, but that guy, Zach Baggins or whatever, I guess he has like a museum of like a bunch of haunted artifacts. And this woman was in there just checking everything out, and she just fainted and collapsed and just passed out and hit her head on the floor. Everybody's kind of like freaking out looking at her. It kind of sounds like something similar going on in this place. Let's see if we can get some decent pictures here. I probably should look up all the pictures beforehand, but kind of go with the flow on this one. Yeah, it's just like your standard pictures here. So that would be pretty cool. Oh, here we go. Yeah, I use DuckDuckGo, but for some reason, it doesn't always load the pictures. Yeah, it doesn't look like anything too crazy for these. That's kind of funny. Let's continue on to the last two here. Well, let me go ahead and get one of the West Virginia Penitentiary. That's a cool picture. Yeah, it's pictures like this that scream haunted prisons. Number 9, Wyoming Territorial Prison, Laramie, Wyoming. The westward expansion of the railroad brought more than money and high times to the people of Laramie, Wyoming, and also brought a score of unsavory men and women and a crime rate that rivaled much larger eastern cities. As a result, the Wyoming Territorial Prison was built as a federal penitentiary in Laramie in 1872. The facility was plagued with problems from the start, with a fire in 1873 and a number of escapes. Fires seem to be occurring rather frequently in these prisons, doesn't it? More than you might expect. Well, then again, I guess if you got like a bunch of people rioting or starting fires, then, it might occur. Of the 44 prisoners accepted in the first 2 years of operation, 11 escaped. Wow, it was like a quarter of them. By 1877, the prison was overcrowded, and as its reputation worsened, changes were made and a second cell block was constructed. It became a state prison from 1890 to 1901. There were at least 5 cells for female inmates and several solitary confinement cells. Soon-to-be famous outlaw Butch Cassidy was incarcerated here from 1894 to 1896. After its closure in 1903, the prison was given to the University of Wyoming, which used it for livestock breeding experiments until 1989. Speaking of livestock breeding experiments, I mean, this wasn't really a livestock breeding experience, but when I was a kid, one of the field trips is almost like a tradition. We would go out and like check out this cow, and it had like a hole cut into the side of it, and we would like put our hands inside of the cow and like feel like it's food and stuff. Is weird. Like, it's just kind of looking back on it now, it just seems like so ridiculous. Like, can you imagine if they had something on like that right now? I'm not sure if they would be allowed to do that, but yeah, it just made me think of that. I was like, man, I forgot all about that until I read this. After its closure in 1903, the prison was given to the... Oh yeah, I just said that. It opened to the public as a historic site 2 years later, and stories of ghosts began to circulate. With more than 1,000 inmates housed there over the years, it's to be expected that some of the prisoners or guards might linger behind. However, there is one prisoner who reputedly is more active than the others. His name is Julius Greenwald, and he was sent to prison for the 1897 murder of his wife. Prison lore states that Greenwald was adept at making cigars and convincing prison staff to allow him to make and sell cigars while incarcerated. He allegedly made the cigars from his cell on the 3rd floor, a cell that was removed during a renovation of the site. Allegedly, Greenwald's spirit did not appreciate this and has manifested as a phantom cigar smell at the prison ever since. Yeah, when my great-grandfather came over here from Sicily in the late 1890s, I think it was the 1890s, he used to make cigars down in Tampa, in Ybor City, way back in the day. 10. Missouri State Penitentiary, Jefferson City, Missouri. The Missouri State Penitentiary, known as the Walls, was constructed in the early 1830s to serve the newly admitted state of Missouri. The earliest prisoners made the bricks that the first walls were built from. The initial prison population consisted of 1 guard, 1 warden, 15 prisoners, and a foreman for the brick-making operation with an assistant. 11 of the 15 prisoners were from St. Louis, and all were incarcerated for larceny except for one, who was in prison for stabbing a man during a drunken brawl. Needless to say, the prison grew many times over the years until it closed down in 2004. During its operation, it saw many infamous prisoners, including Charles Pretty Boy Floyd, James Earl Ray, and Bobby Greenlease, kidnappers Carl Austin Hall, and Bonnie Hetty. They were executed at the prison. In 1954, there was a major riot at the penitentiary. The Missouri State Highway Patrol, Missouri National Guard, and police departments from Jefferson City, St. Louis, and Kansas City, Missouri were called in to help quell the disturbance. Wow, that must have been crazy for them to have to call in all of that. So let's read that one more time. The Missouri State Highway Patrol, Missouri National Guard, and police departments from Jefferson City, St. Louis, and Kansas City, Missouri were called in to help quell the disturbance. Wow, that's a hell of that was a hell of a riot for them to require all of that assistance. When it was all over, 4 inmates had been killed, 29 had been injured, and there had been 1 attempted suicide. 4 guards had been seriously injured, and several buildings had been burned. During its operation, 40 inmates were executed in the gas chamber, and Time magazine once called it the bloodiest 47 acres in America. That's a pretty good title on Time's part for the frequent violence inside its walls. It probably comes as no surprise that since its closure, the penitentiary has become a hotspot for paranormal activity. Staff members and visitors have reported dozens of eerie encounters with lingering spirits, which have been seen, heard, and encountered firsthand. Alright, so we can get some pictures here. That's pretty cool. Someone from the UK is talking about this. Kind of looks like a building that you would expect in Wyoming. This matches the environment, I guess. Wow. Some of these buildings, it's just, I find it really striking, just like, even though these buildings are prisons and, you know, they're housing really violent criminals and all that, I find it kind of interesting how the architecture of these buildings, it actually looks nice. Like, even though it's an opposing, like, you know, fortress for holding all of these individuals, it's just like, it's more of a classical architecture style. Like a lot of the buildings back in the day, I think, looked a lot better than they do now. There's like a certain regalness, or I don't know, like a classical, majestic look, even to, like, you know, buildings that serve a more dark purpose. It's pretty cool. I don't see too many more crazy pictures in here. Haunted prison tour. Alright, well, I think I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. It's been quite a long one, but there's quite a bit of stuff to get through there. Well, so what do you think about this topic? Do you find it interesting that there are a wide variety of hauntings in America? Have you been to some of these haunted prisons? Feel free to let me know down in the comments, and if you wish to find more videos like this, feel free to subscribe. I talk about a wide variety of topics, from paranormal things to spirituality to philosophy to, you know, whatever I find that I think is pretty cool. And until next time, take care. This was some pretty state-of-the-art editing I had to put in here because I had just a bunch of gobbledygook, word garbled mess that made absolutely no sense. I usually try not to edit my videos too much. I try to just kind of talk extemporaneously, but sometimes I just feel like it's just too much of a necessity. Alright, so I'll have some more stuff coming out, and feel free to check it out. I appreciate all 6 of my BitChute subscribers. Thank you guys for subscribing. Just the fact that anybody wants to subscribe to what I have to say and what I talk about and what I read, I think is awesome. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Take care. Oh, and I can't forget my YouTube subscribers too. All 14 of you, even though I know a lot of you, still means a lot to me, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.